team got switched.
Thank you. I think we're good. Just
A lot better. I'm alive.
You're live.
I'm alive.
Victor, do you want a hard copy?
If you have one, yeah. If not, no, I don't need one. But I'll take
I think we're ready. I think we're ready to go. Thank you all for coming back this evening. We appreciate it. So I think we are live streaming tonight, right? Yep. Okay. So welcome to those that might be watching via live stream, and thank you for being here this evening. So this is the continuation of our meeting last week to go ahead and finish the discussion and have a vote regarding our CDBG funding. And we do have an amendment to the agenda for council. And this amendment is actually, it has to do, and it's a good faith amendment contemplated. It was, we have a proposed motion that was on the agenda, and initially it was contemplated as an action item, but due to clerical error, it was noted as proposed motion. And due to that, we have to amend the agenda, and I would be asking for a motion to approve the amended agenda, which references our proposed motion as an action item.
So moved?
Oh, I guess we should do roll call. I'm so focused on getting this right, and I was really working on the language. So how about if we do roll call?
Rodriguez,
Here.
Bruner,
Here.
Hogaboom,
Here.
Levi,
Present.
Haverfield,
Here.
and Scott.
Okay, so now we could actually have a motion to approve the amended agenda as stated.
Second.
Any discussion? Any clarification needed? Roll call.
Bruner,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
All righty. So we will move straight into the unfinished business, which is the continuation from our last meeting. And I believe we're going to start with Beth Einig, who's going to bring us up to speed on what is included in our packet and what staff is recommending this evening.
Mayor and Council, just a couple of housekeeping updates and reminders for you to start things off. First off, I wanted to just offer an apology for your 1,300-page packet that you received about CDBG last week. In this last fiscal year, we have typically used Zoom grants, which I think you guys have accessed in the past to look at specific applications. And that price for that program raised significantly to $4,000, and we didn't feel like it was a good purchase for us. So we went away from that program and went back to kind of a fillable PDF format for our applications. And we fumbled a little bit in trying to figure out the best way to make sure that you all had all of the information that you may want to see. And we didn't probably execute that quite as well as we could have. So next year, for sure, we will provide you with a packet that's less than 20 pages and give you the offer to look at any detailed application you would so like to see at a later point beyond the council packet piece. So I just wanted to offer that apology to you. And then also just to remind you on the public service process, all of the applicants that we receive every year for public service are incredible organizations. And this is, I know, the hardest part of what you guys do in deliberating those. Our guidelines do restrict it to 4 subrecipients and a minimum of $15,000 per subrecipient that can be awarded. And this really came about because of the extensive amount of staff time it takes to work with those subrecipients to make sure that the work that they're doing is in compliance, that they're tracking the information correctly, that their clients that they're serving meet our program requirements. So it's a pretty detailed level of work that we have to do with those subrecipients, and that's why we've limited to 4. And it's really also about kind of those 4 programs that have to be done. We've had some conversations on could we potentially combine the request from the Family Justice Center with the Salvation Army and just fund it at $56,000 or $60,000 with 2 specific programs within that funding under Salvation Army. But we're concerned that it's really essentially 2 programs that are being funded, and it still requires that level of kind of in-depth compliance work with those 2 different programs, even if they're under one umbrella. So we didn't feel like that was necessarily eliminating the reason of why we have the 4 recipient requirements. It's certainly to council's discretion if you want to amend the guidelines and allow for more than 4 subrecipients, but there is that concern on the staff capacity to be able to manage the workload with any more than 4 subrecipients. And then under the non-public service, you certainly have leeway there. What we tried to do at the staff level is Matt put a lot of work together to put together the recommendation that was in your last council packet. Based off of some of the feedback that was received at the last special council meeting, and tried to kind of combine the programs that seem to be of the highest priority to council, and also making sure that we can stay in good standing with HUD. I know that there was some concern about the critical home loan repair program and whether or not that was something that the city should be doing. And I just wanted to take a chance to remind council that program started initially in 2008, and I start to feel old when I remember programs that we started with the city. And we really started that program because we'd been getting a lot of pushback from HUD that we didn't have a consistent home ownership program. They reminded us that HUD stands for Housing and Urban Development, not just urban development. Prior to 2008, we did a lot of work on just infrastructure some economic development-based projects, and then certainly we've always had a strong public service component to it. So that program was really established and started on HUD's direction that we needed to come up with something that was fulfilling that need within the housing sector, that was specifically focused on home ownership, not just the rental side and the affordable housing that we've seen. In years past, we've received a lot of great affordable housing projects that offered some of those niches, but it's not consistent in those applications that we receive. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. The recommendation that's before you essentially outlines for public service that there is $35,000 for Meals on Wheels, $20,000 for Catch, $40,000 for Salvation Army. We dropped the Nampa Family Justice Center piece to $16,500, recognizing they won't be able to start working with clients until the construction piece is done. And so knowing that it will probably only be a few months of the fiscal year that they'll have to be able to really place clients in that facility. So dropped it down to recognize that for a total public service of the $111,500. And then on the non-public service, recognizing that we needed to fund both the Salvation Army remodel project and the Family Justice Center service piece. Those are kind of two in one, essentially. They're co-related projects. So funding that piece of it. In your council packet, Public Works also submitted some statements on kind of reprioritization and moving their Orchard Avenue pedestrian improvements to their first priority. So funding that at the $98,000, funding both the Lions Park shelter and playground projects, and then the housing repair program, brush up, and the sidewalk program. That leaves total non-public service items at that $523. There is $5,700 left over here. And that is part of the request in those motions for you to consider tonight, is identifying from these projects, if you would, on the non-public service allocation, what is your top 1 or 2 priority to fund if excess funds become available, that we can either contribute that $5,000 to. We know there are projects that we have right now that will not spend all of their dollars, and we just don't know the exact amount. And so we'll know that as we get closer to September. But we'd like to include that as part of our action plan so we don't have to go through an extensive process to amend the action plan to add that in later. So the other option that you could do with that $5,700 is to park it within perhaps like the sidewalk repair program. That's a program that we estimate the average project will be between $3,000 and $5,000. So it just allows us to do maybe 1 or 2 more sidewalks. So that was something for you to consider too. I think I hit all my highlights that I wanted to cover.
Beth, thank you. That's exactly what we needed to hear, and I really appreciate that. So with that, I think the council has had the opportunity to review. Thank you for giving us a new packet and the summary. I really appreciate that. So at this time, council, do you have any questions? Councilman Haverfield.
Thanks, Beth. Again, I appreciate your time and the diligence behind what you shared with us. I have a couple of questions in relation to what were recommended positions a week ago and the drastic changes that I see in the current, what took place in the last week that would take away the thought that the advocates against domestic violence would go from being fully funded almost to non-funding. And that's my first question. I think I heard you say that Public Works changed their first priority to their second priority. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that answers that question. I just wanted to confirm it. And then, again, the Nampa Family Justice Center, they have pretty much dropped off the board except for the 16.5 in the public services activities, nothing in the non-public services activities. So could you explain to me first what happened with the Advocates Against Family Violence, why that change in philosophy, and then talk a little bit about the Nampa Family Justice Center for me.
Mayor and Council, on Advocates 1, the ranking that came before you from at the last meeting was based on a citizens group that went through and scored each application based on the criteria within the application. And it was kind of based on the feedback, I think, through the council discussion, that wasn't as high a priority for council compared to addressing the needs of domestic violence victims through the remodel of the Salvation Army facility and that partnership between the Family Justice Center and the Salvation Army to address those needs. And
Can I stop you for a second? My understanding was the Advocates Against Domestic Violence, the whole idea there is to have the potential for housing available to someone in distress, that they would immediately have an opportunity to house them. That kind of rang home with me. So when I heard that, it made sense that they would be someone that we would probably, because it's related to housing as well. The Family Justice Center in the first go-around had no funding supported by staff, but now all of a sudden they are getting some dollars. It almost comes across as a token gift as opposed to something that, when I'm looking at the public service projects, I was more interested in the potential for housing people in need. And that's what I thought the advocates not only do, but they also are there to support someone in distress. So that's where my feelings lied, and that's why I made the motion that I did on Monday night. I heard the testimony of others, but that wasn't my feeling. So I didn't know who persuaded staff to make that change.
Mayor and Council, the advocates one was actually rental assistance, I believe. So it doesn't help victims who need to escape tonight. That is what the Family Justice Center work is to do.
Okay.
And it really helps somebody stay in their apartment who may not be able to make the rent the next month. So it provides that rental assistance. Okay.
So I think part of that question, if you don't mind me stepping in, so the advocates piece on the bottom of this is actually some remodeling within their current, so it's under the non-public service activities. Is that the one you're referring to, Randy, in addition to what was up above under the public service activities?
Yeah, I mean, we see Nampa Family Justice Center, we see them twice, top and bottom, and we also see Advocates Against Family Violence, and that's where I saw a distinction, or I thought I'd seen a distinction where they were more of the housing component and not just the justice defense component. So that's what caught my attention. So when that went away, that's where I have an issue. And sure, there was other reasons by others mentioned on this council for a concern about administration, but it still comes back to me that I understood that it was a defense mechanism allowing them to be able to place someone that needed to have a place to stay where they wouldn't have it maybe otherwise.
So the Salvation Army remodel that's in the lower level, that remodel project, that is the remodel project tied to the funding of Nampa Family Justice Center. And so those are the two that are tied together. So if we did the Salvation Army remodel project without funding the Nampa Family Justice Center up above, we wouldn't have the funding to actually house the local domestic violence victims. So those are the two that are tied together. The remodel in the Nampa Family Justice Center that is underneath Salvation Army remodel in our packet and up on the screen, that is actually a continuation of some remodel that's being done in the Magnum building. And in talking to staff, if it's okay, do you want to share, I mean, Matt can share, you can share, I can share why it is not recommended to move forward with funding that particular project, and there's a reason for that. Not that it isn't needed, but go ahead.
Mayor, we just felt that I think we've funded over $500,000 for remodel of the Family Justice Center and improvements there in the last 24 months. And so we kind of felt like, okay, they've been at the well a lot, and we've done a lot for that building, and we should spread it out a little bit more in this funding cycle.
Okay, and maybe I'm just dragging this out longer than I need to. Was it premature to make the recommendations that we received Monday night? Or, I mean, has there been that much of a change in philosophy based upon what you heard at the council level to drive this change?
Mayor and Council, I think it was really in response to the conversation of council and the interest of council on what to fund. What was proposed was, last Monday night was not a staff level recommendation. It was an outside citizen group that made that analysis.
And maybe that was the distinction that I didn't hear, because I thought it was a staff recommendation. At least that's what I thought my packet indicated, so if that's not the
Actually-
case, then that's not the case.
Yeah, it was actually, and we had a discussion, I had a discussion with staff following the council meeting just to better understand it. And so the advisory committee, the scoring mechanism was scoring very tied to the application, the quality of the application. Unfortunately, this year, and Beth explained why the shift took place, a couple key components were not included in that, whether the priority of the need in the community, if the applicant resides in your local community. Now, advocates for family violence or for domestic violence, they would service people here in Nampa, even though they're not located here. But it missed a very key component. It was strictly based, if I'm saying this correctly, that the scoring mechanism was more tied to how well somebody filled out an application, not based on the actual need that we have in a community. And so as we look to next year and we find our new model, we will ensure that there are a couple of other key pieces of criteria included in the scoring of an applicant, one of which has to do with the need of our community. And so that was the piece that was missed. And so what you saw was nothing more than the scoring mechanism based on an application. But it was missing some key criteria. And it was the recommendation of the committee. And I always support, when you have a committee that takes their time, you want to listen to their recommendations. Unfortunately, that was a little awkward this time. And I think in talking to staff, there were even a few of the committee members that were a little surprised by how it scored out. And so as we move to the future, I think we need to ensure that there are certain mechanisms in there or benchmarks that score, and then the percentage that goes with that to ensure that we're getting the outcome that we really need in our community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought staff was making the recommendation. That's why I supported it. If it wasn't the staff that was making the recommendation based upon a committee that had been formed, it was my position to support the staff, but now I'm hearing that it wasn't the staff that made the recommendation that we saw before us to vote on. So shame on me for not catching that, and I would have asked the question then. Does this have the staff's support? And if it hadn't had a chance to get that benchmark taken care of, then I would have maybe supported the idea to prolong this to tonight. So I understand better now. Thank you.
I think the other key component that we possibly missed last week was that the Salvation Army remodel was directly tied to funding the Nampa Family Justice Center portion up above in the public service activities piece. And I think last week we didn't necessarily have the link of those two together, that those two are actually tied together, because in name of nonprofit they're not, but in functionality they are.
Thank you.
Mayor, as usual. Add on. You think I talked enough last time. You weren't here, Beth. You didn't get to hear it, did you? Thank you. Just a couple statements, and I do have, is it okay, Mayor, for me to bring up Darren then after my statements? Councilman Haverfield, let me just, first opinion on the advocates. I think this has been clarified. The other thing that I was concerned about, they were asking, I believe, for over $67,000. And even by the committee, a recommendation, I think it was, what, 21,000 or whatever. So it wasn't even, about a third or less than a third of what they were asking for.
Right.
So as far as them to be able to accomplish what they needed to accomplish, I did not feel like that was advantageous for us to give them that when we only had 4 to choose from. Let me just state, and I understand from a staff standpoint, but I was you can call it what you want. I'm the one that suggested, that you were not here, Beth, that we combine the two together, Family Justice and Salvation Army. And yeah, I wanted to add one more, and the Boys and Girls Club, which I know has a great fundraising mechanism, but I just feel like they're deserving. So I'm still in favor of that. I will go along with whatever this council folks, but I would still be in favor if there was a way of combining those two, that we would then give some monies to Boys and Girls Club so they can add to their programming that they're already doing. Darren, do you mind coming up and... I spent, and by the way, I just want to compliment Matt and Morgan and Jared, all that were involved with the Brush Up Nampa on Saturday. I was out there, Lions Club always does a lunch, and just so impressive how you guys handled that, so appreciate that. It also gave me opportunity to look at the shelter, and my understanding from looking at the photos, the shelter where the lunch was held, that's the shelter we're talking about, not the shelter closer to the swimming pool, et cetera, correct?
That's correct. I don't know which one you held your.
Well, the photo I know is the one
Okay.
of that.
Okay.
I am not going to be willing to vote at this point in time in favor of that shelter, okay? At least not for $108,000. I feel like I talked to probably a dozen different people, asked their opinion, anywhere from painters to Kirk Bowman, who runs the lunch and so on, and they said, yeah, it needs some repairs, needs some cleanup, but my understanding is what this is entailing is taking that totally down and making a new shelter. We're talking about concrete and slab and the whole bit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So let me just, I will state in a minute what I am proposing on that. The other thing is I went to look at the playground. That playground that you guys have put in is fabulous. I could not believe, it was a Saturday, 11:30. But you could not believe that, I bet there was, I would have guessed 70 to 80 parents and kids that were on that playground. I went over then and looked at the playground over by the swimming pool. No one was there. I could understand why. So as far as me from a citizen, and I'm not a construction guy or anything of that sort, so I'm not even gonna, try to put that across. But to me, we need an extra play area. That was overcrowded because they loved everything that was happening at that playground. So I'm in favor of the secondary playground as a top priority. I repeat, I'm not in favor, other than some leftover money. I would think there would be some improvements that we can extend the roof or whatever the case is without replacing the whole slab of concrete, et cetera. I'm in favor of proposing that the family justice, I realize we've done a lot of projects, a lot of work. I went over and saw there for the first time. I apologize for it taking me this long to get over there, but what they're doing over there is amazing. So I'm proposing that we do fund the Family Justice Center for the amount asked, to do the secondary playground, to forego the shelter, and that would leave us, by my math, which this man here is a much better mathematician, but to me that leaves a balance of $32,063.52. That hopefully we could then do repairs on that shelter or whatever the case may be. So I just wanted to make that statement, and that I would not be voting no if that shelter's involved in this in this total program. Yes on that. Okay. Thanks, Darren.
Just, Mayor, Council, so can I just summarize, Councilman Bruner, can you, so the Salvation Army request, and then remove the line item from the park shelter? Those are the only swaps?
Nampa Family Justice
Yes,
Center.
Nampa Family Justice Center.
I'm including the family, and if my math is correct, that comes out to $497,000 in dollars and cents. It leaves a balance of about $32,000.
I'd like to clarify, so the Lions Park Playground that is being referenced here is not the existing playground and repair, is that correct? Because, Darrell, is that what you're?
It's the one by the swimming pool, correct? What's being, for the $70,000, isn't that the playground by the swimming pool?
Yes, that's correct. That's the one that we have for the $70,000.
And there was not a child at all when I drove by there, whereas I repeat, I think 70 to 80 adults and children having wonderful times on that wonderful new playground.
At the other playground. So this is the one that you're referring to. Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, since Councilman Bruner opened up a door of being maybe a bit creative there, just good, doing math. I'm just wondering for CDBG clarification, as far as needs in the community, some of the things that I'm hearing, for example, we have Brant Park, which is basically just the lawn. Do we have a parking lot there, Darren? Like, I'd rather see a new shelter go there, for example, to at least provide some sort of an amenity rather than no amenity there, as opposed to replacing. I don't know what the rules are on, or a splash pad. That's the top #1 request from the community is getting a splash pad. can you just provide some, yeah,
Mayor and Council, I don't believe Brant Park is in an eligible census tract.
okay.
So for our Parks Department to have projects funded by CDBG, it has to be a park that is limited use mainly in the neighborhood, and that neighborhood has to be an eligible census tract for the low moderate income percentages. So,
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Okay, if there are no further questions, is there a motion?
Are we dividing this up between the two or not?
I don't think so. If we have questions, we have staff and others here to answer them, but if we don't have questions, we could
So-
actually move forward.
So Mayor, can I have, I'm sorry, one more clarification from Beth? Then if I make the motion to combine into, say, Salvation Army with the 56,500, is the main objection to that, which if we want to refer to it as objection or not, is the extra staff time no matter what? Is there anything else that's pertaining to that?
Mayor and Council, that's the main concern, is just the time it takes to administer that and to make sure that, we haven't had a conversation in depth with those two agencies to make sure that
Yeah.
they would be able to make that work. And then the other thing to note is that we would need to subtract out $15,000 from either a combination of those programs that are funded currently in this scenario to be able to put that money into another subrecipient.
So it goes
Right.
back to, you're not allowed to take a single recipient below 15,000, and then that would create a funding problem, because we wouldn't be able to fund at the necessary level.
For the 15,000 minimum, like for
Right.
what I was advocating for the Boys and Girls Club, that we would only have that 5,000 something or whatever remaining. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mayor and Council, no, that 5,000 can't be used for public service. We are at our cap for public service. So we would have to cut 15,000 from Meals on Wheels or Catch or the other Salvation Army program to offset, to create the funds available for the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, and making this difficult, I know I am, but I'd have to look at the balance. So
We can't combine the two pots.
we need 15,000, and that would deplete then at least one or two other programs to have that happen.
Right. I mean, Mayor and Council, looking at it, I mean, just simply based on the numbers that are up there, you could eliminate Catch as a subrecipient. They're funded there at 20,000 and put all of that 20,000 into the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, I will go ahead and make a motion, but then before my motion, council people need to help Boys and Girls Club where we can, personally. Okay.
A question
Go.
before you start,
Okay.
if you don't mind. According to HUD regulations, you cannot take away from Catch or from Salvation Army, because that's who they work with, correct?
No, Mayor and Council, we can choose to fund, if you wanted to, you could give 100% of our public service money to advocates. We don't have to fund Salvation Army and Catch. They definitely play an important role in the housing piece and the rapid rehousing work that they're doing, but we don't have to fund them. It's good to fund them because it does help with the numbers that we've identified in our 5-year plan of what we're trying to accomplish in the community. We definitely have a housing component to that those organizations help us to make sure we're achieving.
So I'm with Councilman Bruner here. I do want to give Boys and Girls Club something. But at this point, now we only have, 5 more months. Would it be better to give them what we can now or give them a new application for 2020?
Mayor
What's
Council,
easier?
this money is for next year. So nobody will receive any money until after October 1. And then we have to wait until we get our allocation, which this year wasn't until February. So,
I see.
So this is $2020 that they're looking at.
Could you help me understand because I love the Boys and Girls Club. Melissa, you guys do amazing work, and that's what is so difficult about this. It's like Kim Dugan with Advocates. Absolutely incredible work that they do. I think the world of her and the work that's done. The challenge is we really have 4 entities that we can fund to where, sometimes we dilute and we don't do anything well, and we need to do what we do well. A question I have for you is, in our priorities, because we have guidelines that we have adopted, and if I understand correctly, housing is one of them. So like Boys and Girls Club, where does that fit in our priorities with CDBG funding?
Mayor and Council, certainly housing is one of our top priorities. It's one of our biggest needs, especially in our current economy. There is a small, Matt did a little bit of research, there is a mention about youth services within the community that we could fit the Boys and Girls Club underneath. It's not necessarily recognized as a high priority need within our 5-year consolidated plan at this point.
So I think I feel bad saying this, but I'm going to be that neutral side because I love Melissa here and their work. I think we need to be mindful of the grant dollars that we're using and how we're applying them and the guidelines that we created, that are created around those, which is housing. And so that's difficult because when you have something that, like Boys and Girls Club, the work that they do is so imperative. So I guess I want to make sure that we're staying within our guidelines, that we're utilizing the funds and that we don't get in trouble. And I don't know that we would get in trouble, but we could be looked upon less favorably if we're not following the guidelines that we established with the CDBG grant. Is that correct?
Mayor and Council, I would certainly advise you not to eliminate the two housing projects specifically, Catch and Salvation Army certainly. But I think that if you were to eliminate just one of those and replace that funding into the Boys and Girls Club, we would be okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
Council? I have a question. Can you explain the continuum of care and how the money from Catch has a multiplier impact in other funds that they receive into our community that would otherwise be lost into our community?
I certainly cannot, but
Okay.
I will look and see if there's something.
Everyone's pointing fingers.
Margie.
Of course.
If it's okay. So that continuum, Margie Potter with Salvation Army, the continuum of care money comes in and we have to match a certain amount of that money. I think it's 25%. I think it's 25% of that money. I'm fairly certain that's the amount. But I'm leaving like a little tiny bit for error there. But so if we don't match that money, ours is $125,000, and I believe Catch gets $160,000 that comes into NAMPA. So if we don't match that money, so we won't get that continuum of care money as well. So that's $125,000. So let's say you decided to not fund Salvation Army, the $40,000. That's also $125,000 that's not going to come into NAMPA. So that's, and the same thing with Catch. I mean, they have other funding that they get as well that they put towards that, but that's $160,000. That's money that comes into just NAMPA. So that money goes away to NAMPA, from NAMPA to other areas.
And that's helping people get out of our shelters into a home.
Correct.
Yeah.
And wraparound services like, life skills and, staying in those homes after the fact. So.
So, Madam Mayor, unless there's more discussion, I'm ready to make a motion, and if it's not, no one seconds it, we move on, right? Okay. So I'll make the motion. There's 3 action items, looks like. So number 1, approve public service funding allocation limit to the 14% of the 2019 CDBG entitlement grant. So that would be, so that is not anything in administration. So I would move that we go ahead and do that with the public service as recommended by staff.
Second.
I thought we were doing the whole thing. Are we doing the whole?
You
I
can.
thought you,
Again,
Okay, whatever you want to do. I don't care. 1 and 1 is fine with me. I don't.
I'd like
process.
maybe one at a time rather than an omnibus, unless we
Okay.
have to do it all.
We
No,
can do it
don't.
one at a time, and that might be easier. So we could
Okay.
start with action item number 1, which is to approve the public service funding allocation limit to be 14% of the 2019 CDBG entitlement grant, as you said, and you said as
As staff-
recommended
as
by
recommended by
staff in the
correct.
Mayor, just a clarification, so that's funding what's highlighted here through public service.
The four that you have recommended. Okay.
So it's been moved by Darrell Bruner and seconded by
lots of people.
Bruce Cox. Okay, by several.
So
Okay.
just for clarification then, the motion is St. Alphonsus for 35, Catch for 20, Salvation Army for 40, and Nampa Family Justice Center for 16.5.
That's my motion, yes.
All right, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Everfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
and Brunner.
Yes. So Mayor, if it's okay, I'll just dominate this, and then we'll move on to number 2, allocate CDBG funds for the program year 2019 for administration and planning, public services, and non-public service activities. I would want to make sure, I would like to make that change. I'm not recommending as far as what the staff is recommending, to the point where I am deleting the shelter, and I am adding the Family Justice Center.
Mayor and Council, I think this one is actually the 155,000 for.
Is that the administration?
Yes. the
I
administration.
apologize.
Okay.
It's, so they all say okay. So this would just be for the administration, this would be for the 155,000 plus that I would recommend that we pass.
Second.
And I have a question.
Okay, discussion. Go ahead.
So on the admin costs, if I'm reading the packet right, there's really 2 line items. There's admin costs built in for full-time equivalent, prorated. So for example, take the sidewalk repair program, since we decided to adjust the way we do the LID. There's 41,000. I just want to be clear to explain this, because there's been some questions about this. 41,000 that's listed under sidewalk repair program. However, the direct benefit's really going to be around 30,000. Is that correct?
Mayor and Council, yes.
Okay, so the 41,000 is a direct benefit of 30,000, and then the admin, what I'm trying to understand is the admin amount that's listed here in what's been motioned and seconded is a separate piece than what's built into the admin costs that are built into the amounts that are listed.
Mayor and
Okay.
Council, yes. So the program administration, the 155,000, that pays for the staff time and support to administer all of our CDBG programs, all of our subrecipients, all construction projects through the city that have CDBG dollars. And then there's other couple of programs that were listed in my report for brush up and the sidewalk and the loan program. That is, the staff time that is in there is direct program delivery. So that's working with the homeowners directly. That's not administering the other CDBG programs.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. I struggle with 11,000 to administer 30,000, and I knew that when we were going that route with the sidewalk LID that there was going to be an admin cost, and I know that the CDBG grant will fund this, not the. Otherwise, it would be your time away from other tasks from the city. So one way or another, your time is going to be spent administering a loan that will benefit maybe 6 people, but it's going to cost us $11,000 to handle the process of going through all the applications and picking and overseeing it. So I struggle with that. I think a lot of people in our community struggle with.
Yeah.
And that's not to belittle at all what you're making and the work that you do for the city. It's just, it's really difficult, especially from the nonprofit world, when looking at direct benefit costs, 11,000, $1 to give away 3. It's really tough. I want to maximize more of our money better in another route, but. Yeah.
Mayor and Council, if I can, on the sidewalk and brush up and all of those things, those are actual time. And with the sidewalk, honestly, I mean, we guessed, we took an estimate of what we think it will take for staff time to administer that program, but our staff has to track their hours, just like attorneys, by project, and we only bill for actual hours spent. So if it turns out that it only takes half that time to administer the sidewalk program, that's all that will get spent. And then we can adjust that in next year's application if we reapply for those funds.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thanks, I appreciate it.
So, Madam Mayor, let me clarify, since we're working on that. My understanding, though, actually the home loan repair program has much higher administration costs percentage-wise than even the sidewalk would, correct? I'm seeing 70%. 0.70 of the total, is that correct? FTA?
No, Mayor, Council, that's, the 0.7 is the amount of full-time employee that's working on it. That's
Okay.
not the cost. It's, I think their total salary and benefit cost for that is around, if I remember right, 28,000.
So help me with the anticipated program income of 40,000. Define that for
That is
me.
the loan payments that we are receiving from programs, because since the program's been in place for 11 years, we receive payoffs when people refinance or sell their homes, and we receive monthly payments from some of our recipients. So it's a loan program, so those homeowners pay that money back. So that's us realizing those payments.
So the dollars totally going into the program would be I don't need an exact, but an approximate, what, out of the $100,000, how much would actually be utilized to help people with their costs?
So the total program actually is 140,000. We only need 100 from CDBG because that other 40 comes from the program income. So there's a revenue stream with that. So of the 140,000, there's 28,000 that goes to salary and 15,900 that goes to benefits. So you're gonna make me do math in my head. 43 roughly. That goes
That's pretty
to
good. I'd say that's pretty, is that correct?
the salary and benefits from for that program out of the 140 total. And those ones, I will tell you, I mean, the cap on each house is 15,000, and these homeowners are dear individuals that need a lot of hand holding through this process. It takes a lot of staff time. Our average age is 58. Many of them are much older and haven't done an extensive repair in their home for a very long time. And so the whole process of contracting with construction firm to do the work and to help them through the process is pretty intensive.
Oh, if they're older than 58, I understand. Okay.
She said that like it was old.
It gets younger every day.
That's right.
Okay,
Okay.
we have a second, right on.
We have a motion and a second to allocate the funds for the administrative planning, the public service, and the non-public service activities. Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call. I'm sorry, yes.
Can I get a rundown once again of what that was for the non-public, please?
So for the non-public services, it was for the housing loan program, Brush Up Nampa sidewalk repair program. Beth, is that correct? For the, and then
I thought we were just doing the administration. I
it's
thought
the
I was correct.
administration, but it actually talks
Yeah,
about the
yeah, we don't have
administration.
a motion for the other one that I'm seeing, so.
Well,
This motion's only for administration.
Yeah,
but
but
it's
I'm
the
just,
administration related to those.
Mayor and Council, I'm sorry, we messed up. I did, in our communication over here, the one motion does list out each three pieces if you want to approve each three individually. We've approved the public service, so if you want to approve the admin and planning overall and the non-public service at one time, you can.
so
That's
that's,
what I was wondering. I was like, we're missing something
Yeah,
here.
'cause
Either
there's
the
thir-
last motion is
Yeah.
wrong or, okay, so,
okay.
okay.
So I could go over my initial statement then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And Councilman Levi wanted a clarification though, right, or repeat?
Okay, and that's where I was confused, and that's why I asked for clarification, because we were talking about, I thought the original motion I have written down was for the administration part of it, and then we started talking about the non-public service, and I thought, I think I missed something somewhere.
Well,
and
and
I
it was
just
the
wanted to verify it.
administration piece related to those projects. However, I think I'd like to recommend that we rescind the motion and start over again.
Okay. So are we, Beth, are we accurate if I make the motion again to combine then the overall 155,000 administration in this motion?
Yes, you may.
Okay. So I will do that. I would recommend that. And then I stated then as far as the changes, as far as in the non-public service, that, and I will go with the amounts that were asked for as far as on the home loan, okay, and on the Brush Up Nampa, on the sidewalk, and I'm just abbreviating these, on Orchard, on the playground, on the Family Justice Center, and on the Salvation Army remodel, with the remaining, if my math is correct, about 32,000 that I would recommend if it will work for that to go then for repairs or on the park shelter at Lions Park. That would be my motion.
I understand your motion, Councilman Brunner, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions?
Clarification then. I'm trying to follow the logic here. Okay, Salvation Army full funding at 89,946. Nampa Family Justice Center funding or not? For how much?
$81,637.72.
Okay, the requested amount.
They're all requested, the ones that I.
Okay, so if you're just looking at the requested amounts, then there's about a $20,000 difference. Is that what you were saying?
I said 32, so my math maybe is wrong. I
No,
thought
it was good. They had, yeah, it was right. It was good math.
Okay. So where did those dollars go?
I recommend then to go into the park shelter, which the recommendation was for 108,000.
So you're still funding the park shelter then?
Well, I'm not the full redo, I'm just,
He's
With the
funding
difference.
repair,
Right.
yeah.
just repair.
Okay. Because I was waiting to see if that money might go towards sidewalk repair or.
And that's, you can amend it or whatever. Or
No,
vote
you've already
against it,
made the
yeah.
motion. I
Yeah.
just wanted to understand so I didn't miss where the extra dollars were going.
Are we at a discussion point then? Do we have a second? So Beth, my understanding though, this sidewalk repair there again, there will be, we will have time to add to this if we want to next go around. Is that right?
Mayor and Council, yes, that could be part of the next motion we're asking you to make is prioritizing where you want excess funds to go in the following.
I guess I can't fall back. If I was amending my motion, I would add that onto it, that any extra funds would go to that.
Our next action item will be exactly
Okay.
that, so we'll be able to do that.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just question, didn't hear from Darren as far as I like the motion and the sentiment to give part of what was allocated, but the request was based on what was proposed. And so I'm just wondering if this money would even do Darren any good with the suggestion of a remodel, or if it should be put elsewhere.
Yes, council, we haven't really approached that, got a quote for any kind of repair. If that is the decision from the council, and there's $32,000, we'll certainly try to work out something with that. This is already a prefabricated shelter, and so coming up with design and things like that will certainly be some cost, but we're certainly willing to look at that. So.
Yeah, the overall, what I read in the breakdown of the bids that I saw, I think I saw 3 different bids, was the roofing. I realized that would be the whole roof was $11,205. That was just for the material.
So let's see.
And I think what wanted full coverage for some of the tables are not covered, do not have roofing over them. So if that money could be utilized, I'm just adding on
Yeah,
here, but that's
correct,
where I
yeah.
could see if we could cover the remaining area.
Yeah, and I don't know the history of that. It's a really old shelter. I don't know if one time there was a shelter over all of that and it was torn down many years ago. It's expected that that shelter is well over 50 years old, and so I don't know the history, but just a portion of the tables are covered by a
Right,
single
correct.
shelter. And so I think if you saw one of the quotes, the whole shelter was $108,000. When you see $11,000 for the cover, that was for a standing seam metal roof rather than just a regular metal roof.
Okay.
So, question, Mayor. So Darren, if you do the remodeling of this shelter and it doesn't come out to this amount, less than what happens with the remaining, if there is going to be any, we can apply it somewhere else, right? Right, right,
Yeah.
right. But this is the lowball price for fixing this shelter, right?
Yeah, I think what we would have to do now, if that is the budget, we would go hire a design team to try to work with the existing parts and put something together for that. So, like I said, I can't really tell you exactly how much that would be because that's not the route we took. We looked at a prefabricated system, which is generally less expensive than
Right.
building from scratch.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Darren, something, I'll just say that at a later time, let's visit, because one thing that I am really sensitive to is hiring a design team. For example, if it needs a new roof, maybe we need to put the funds towards a roof over that area and then, or get a bid for extending the roof and see what we can get done with that 30,000. But I think one thing that I think I and maybe other council members are sensitive to is when we're spending money on design, outsourcing a design that takes all the money and we don't get the work done, when we could hire a contractor to come in and redo the roof. So let's be mindful of that, but we can talk about it later.
Sure.
but I think we need to be mindful of how we utilize those funds so that we don't spend it all in design and then we don't have the funds to do the work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Darren. I just wanted to hear from him. I'll support the motion, but if Darren said, you know, it's an all or nothing proposition, spend the money elsewhere, then maybe entertain that thought. But you're going to make do, it sounds like, so I'll support the motion. Yeah,
We'll
thank you.
we'll give it a shot.
All right.
I won't get a Christmas card from you.
Are there any other discussion points? We have a motion and a second to approve as stated, and I think there's clarity. Okay, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Everfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
and Brunner.
Yes.
So this last action item is for the council to prioritize the two highest activities to fund, and this is public service activities to fund, if funding should, is that correct, or is it any?
Non-public service.
Non-public, I'm sorry, I just read public service activities, non-public service act, that's what I meant. But anyway, should funding come available, and Councilman Brunner, I think you had a suggestion that started to come, maybe you didn't,
Well,
which
yes.
was,
No, my
yeah.
motion, I only had one, but it would be for sidewalk repair if we have any balance. It would be my motion. I guess I'll just make it a motion. You wanted two though, right?
Mayor and council, we do anticipate that we could have up to $100,000 that
man.
would need reallocated. So just to clarify, do you want up to $100,000 put towards sidewalks? Do you want to set some limits on, so you want to add 20,000 to sidewalks and 40,000 to something else? Or
I've
just
been
to give us
dominating.
some
I'll let
limits.
somebody else speak to that at this point. Oh, I'll pull,
Percentage?
I will pull my motion until this, yeah.
Councilman Scott.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Fellow council members, I like the sidewalks as a first priority for safety and improvement. Then I'd also like to add the part of it to parks. So put that in however motion we want to. So let's say, give me some numbers, Beth. How much? We just need to pick two,
Right.
right?
Percent?
Two, and as long as we have kind of an up to $100,000 have been kind of designated, because I doubt we'll have more than that. Obviously, we would come back to council if we do, but that would give us a good direction.
So I'll make the motion that any remaining funds go to the sidewalk repair program up to $60,000, and then any remainder goes to the parks that qualify.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Just for clarity, Beth, does that work from a funding standpoint? It does, okay. Great, okay. Are there any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Brunner,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Everfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Skog.
Yes.
Okay, and that concludes our action items. I would like to say, Melissa, Boys and Girls Club, and then I don't know that anyone's here for advocates against family violence or domestic violence. You're not here for that, right? Okay. So I just want to say for those that weren't funded, hang in there and really look at the grant and how to use it and how you can apply next year. Don't be discouraged. The Boys and Girls Club is amazing. You do incredible work. And Melissa, thank you for your leadership. We're looking forward to it. And the same for Kim Dugan and the work that Advocates does. It's very important. We have amazing nonprofits, Meals on Wheels. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you guys do. Salvation Army, you guys do amazing work. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity for our local victims of domestic violence to have a shelter right here that they can go to immediately that's very close to our Family Justice Center. That's extremely important. And also the upgrades that'll take place to help our families so that we can get our family shelter back to being a family shelter year-round. That's very important for this community. So
Mayor, I always have to have an add-on. Just let me show my prejudice that these two young people out here, Melissa Gentry and Doug Waterman, are NNU alums. She's an alumnus. So anyway, I just want to give my kudos out to them. So we produce good people. So
You do, by all means.
I think it was U of I that helped this.
well, NNU at least was able to prepare him to make it through U of I.
That's right.
All right, motion to adjourn?
I would stand for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.